Hey everyone, I'm your host Natalie Bodie. On the show today is the creator of Urban Necessities, a sneaker resale and consignment store that has reported up to $30 million in annual sales and was built after its owner turned $40 and a dream into a business that has made its mark in a $6 billion industry. Please welcome the one and only Jaysse Lopez to the show. So it said that you had 21 million in sales in 2019. Was that your best year yet with Urban Necessities? You've broken it since then.
Yeah, so the last 2 years I was with the brand, we did like 30 and close to 30.
Wow.
With one location, right? I'm not there anymore, but it's been amazing to see like the impact and like the voice that brand allowed me to create, right? With the support of the community.
Where were you mentally and emotionally before you started Urban Necessities?
Mentally and emotionally lost, frustrated. When I look back, I mean, I think I was very misunderstood, and I really didn't know how to read the room, probably as good as I did. I didn't really understand, like my last job was like a retail job, right? Like I come from retail and like just logistics and stuff, and I didn't understand like not buying in, like the value in buying into the business's way, right? So there's processes and procedures that are put in, but I always try to make them more efficient or faster, or like cut layers, not really understanding, like fighting the moral fight for like the little guy isn't the corporate way. And so when I lost my last like job, I really was like, man, I'm like fighting for all these customers and it cost me my job. I don't like the way that feels. Like I would love to, how do I build something for the little guy? And so that whole mindset was for the little guy. And I started looking at sneakers and seeing that in the retail space, there was like all these like missing layers. And I was trying to find a job, but I wasn't getting hired anywhere I applied. So I just took on sneakers, and it just took a life of its own from the beginning.
I saw that you started your business with $40. How did you take $40 and build it into a $30 million in sales empire?
Sometimes just being in the right room. Like again, some of my story, right? So I don't have my stuff together like most people. I'm spending money that like. I'm living outside my means. That eventually I lose my apartment. I'm now living with my girlfriend, who's now wife. I'm trying to sell sneakers off my mother-in-law's kitchen table. And I realized really early on that I couldn't really scale if it was with the money in my pocket. So I started going towards all the people that I'd been selling shoes to. And the one common gripe was, I'm tired of spending this money on the next one and it costs more every single time. And I started getting them to sell the sneakers I had already sold them. So I switched my model to consignment. And then it helped that when I got that first store, I did a trade show right before that I generated some money. By the time I paid everybody out, by the time I signed the lease, by the time I, got the business license, all that, I had $40 left to my name. I'm like sleeping in the store at the beginning of it. My rent was like $500 a month, and I like sublet like space in the store. So I was able to like on credit, like spit handshake credit, build this brand that like took a life of its own from day one.
I want to take a step back in your journey because I think adversity is among the greatest teachers, and you spent some time homeless in Las Vegas. And I even saw that there was a park that you even remember the park that it said you lived there for about 6 months. What was that time period like when you were homeless? What perspective did you gain that helped you later?
That I could do it on my own. I was young. I mean, it was a long time ago. That park's like now closed.
Wow.
But I was just tired of like picking up the phone and taking my burdens and giving them to someone else, my mom, right? And it's like in my 20s, like how do I just figure it out? I'm not like book savvy or anything. Like I struggle to sit down. Like it's hard for me to sit. Like I'll hear the keywords, but I can't read a book. Like I'm just not that guy, right? And so when I was out there, the things I like really focused on is like, this is the worst it'll get. It'll get better than this. Like I had to remove like ego. It really humbled, and then I didn't really want to panhandle. So I eventually like from panhandling scraped up money to, sell bottles of water and buy coolers and water and like did that on the strip, and then eventually saved enough money to like where I could stay in a weekly. And then once I was able to stay in weeklies, I bought clothes, and then I applied for jobs, and then I got a job. So, I overlooked a lot of things. I had habits, but not like habits that were like debilitating kind of thing.
So in your early days of having a storefront, it seems like you had success relatively quickly from what I read in your article with Business Insider. Like going from $40 to I read by the end of the year you did
3 months we did $1 million.
$1 million in 3 months.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Like what do you think came together for you to enable that?
Man, a lot, because the first one was I forecasted that malls were gonna be like the place that if you were gonna build a consignment shop, that's where you needed to be, right? I was very active in sneaker groups like globally, and had already built like the relationships within the community as a trusted name. And then we were just having fun. Like we were taking like the guerrilla marketing aspect, creating content that like wasn't normal, and just people were like, it was refreshing, right? Like we weren't selling like the last 180 days of variants that had released. We were like really focused on finding those like items you don't see every day, and then made it a destination. And the way that we built, especially at the beginning, was we weren't looking at what makes money. It was always what's missing in retail, right? What's missing in this space? What would stop me from coming in here once and then not coming back? And so that really forced us to add layers that we probably shouldn't have in hindsight to have a profitable business, especially being consignment. We were undercutting everybody. Like there was just so much stuff. And then 8 months in, we came up with that concept of like being able to win the shoes through machines and like community pooling it. And it just, that like the day we had that first win was like the shot heard around the world, and everybody started coming to the shop after that. It was a lot of fun. I miss those days. I really do. It's when I was making money. That's when we were really making money.
So what is the challenge there with continuing that growth? You say that was when you were really making money. How do you sustain that? What are some of the challenges that are presented within that?
I mean, I could go in so many different directions, right? When you're a prideful person, when you're like competitive, your ego pushes you to take on layers, right? You try to, you dream big. And then like, again, I want to talk about like how I just didn't have certain layers, and so you overlook stuff, and then you start adding stuff, and then you don't realize, oh man, how do we keep this layer? How do you sustain that? But the community was just, we were offering such a low consignment rate. Everybody was consigning with us, and we were running out of room, and we needed to sell the shoes faster because it started becoming a burden. Consigners getting impatient because we weren't selling some shoes fast enough because we were taking on so much inventory. And so, yeah, it's nuts. It really is kind of nuts.
There's so many questions I want to ask you from that because it's all so interesting. But one of the first things I was thinking about when you were talking, how do you source unique pieces? Because it seems like a market where everybody wants to find unique stuff. Everyone wants to sell it themselves. How are you finding really coveted pieces?
Great question. I started going to trade shows, and then I was going to the local ones, but it wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. They're too small, right? So then there's this trade show called SneakerCon, and I remember, wanting to take my machines to them and emailing them over 50 times to the point where they were like, look, kid, like, scram, we don't want you at our show. And like I'm like, well, I got to get in the show. This is the show. Like, this is the World Series of sneakers, right? Like, I got to go there. And so I start sneaking in through other people's vendor passes. I start buying shoes. And then it just, like, I remember my first show there, I think I spent like $3,500. But by the end of it, like, you know, this is years later, I'm spending 7 figures and, you know, in the trade show. And it's just building a lot of relationships, traveling all over the world, not focusing on the margin or the profit, just like kicking it down the road. And like, where it was for us, it was the right way to build, but it's not necessarily like the way that I would suggest somebody to follow, because it's like psychotic. But most businesses try to focus on last 180 days when they're resellers. I was focused on trying to create the museum where you could see, touch, feel. So my intentions were very different, and it's hard to make that a business.
Is that what you thought was missing from the market at that time?
Yeah, it still is. I think the reason my brand worked was because it was like such sensory overload, right? From the amount of items that are offered, to the space of the place, to, you know, even we would use scents to kind of calm people down, because I started notice, and I even had Frenchies that I would take we like incorporated into the
Sounds
brand.
like Disney World there. I want to go.
Yeah. So this is what I noticed, right? Like, I was in the Hood Mall. We went from the Hood Mall to the Good Mall to the Great Mall. And when we were in the Hood Mall, I would have all walks of life come in, from average Joe to Fat Joe, like from royal families to Celine Dion, like, would come in. And sometimes it would be that sneaker enthusiast and their significant other. Significant other could care less about like what's in this, like what offering we had, not into it. Don't care for the music that's being played in the store, or anything around the that's in the mall, right? Because we're in the Hood Mall. So when I started noticing that buyers or like patrons were getting anxiety because they're now feeling like this, like, sense of urgency of, I got to hurry up and get out because this person doesn't want to be there, whether that was their boyfriend, girlfriend, mom, dad, grandparent, aunt, uncle. I was like, man, if I can't. And then I also noticed, like, most of my guests that were buying stuff were there for more than 30 minutes. So I'm like, how do I get everybody to stay for 30 minutes? Bought Frenchies. Everybody loves like little puppies, right? Like, and then started putting like nice scents and stuff in the store, and like trying to play music that you don't hear at like H&M and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it was different.
Sounds like you were really involved early on.
No, I was overly involved the first probably 6 to 7 years, and I was there for about 8.5.
But you speak about it so fondly, and I can tell, like, you look on those times with great memories. Yeah. And one thing I often hear from people who build businesses is loving the build. It's not necessarily when you get to the mountaintop, it's that journey along the way.
Well, the top of the mountain, even though this is what you like hope to be able to see and look down at, it's different, right? Like, it's not what you did it doesn't, at the end of it, it's not what you do it for. You do it because, or I did it because I enjoyed the building. Like, I love adding layers. I love being able to like provide it in a way that few see it. I think that's what's always separated us, right? But when you get all those layers and you're not able to add the correct layers as far as the team or the system, or have, like, you know, the money to really keep it going, it gets tough at the beginning, at the end of it, right? So it's really hard to keep going.
So we talked a little bit about how you've pivoted a bit now, and you kind of you said you were feeling like you were in that building phase again.
Yeah.
How have things changed for you?
Well, my business partner, wife, 3 years ago was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. She's pretty much everything that I wasn't good at. So HR, payroll, like, I'd be the visionary, and it's like, all right, it's for you to figure out how this stick and doesn't break. When she went down, you know, and obviously our focus changed, I had to get help. And we found some people that we felt were the right people to take on the brand. And, like things happen and it was just my time to go. Right. And so the blessing in disguise, even though I genuinely miss having the interactions, is that I was able to catch some health stuff that I had some issues with. And now I'm back outside working, and I feel like I'm at the beginning of what I was doing over there, but my time's a lot shorter, even though my support and resources are a lot different than when I started. So I'm now trying to teach creatives in business and entrepreneurs how not to break it, how not to take those wrong contracts that, things that I might have overlooked along the way, So I've always joked that I've been like a social worker. So I've started a brand called Social Services, and its focus is just helping all walks of life, like build it. So it's been a lot of fun. Right now, I'm like my passion project with it is a gentleman by the name of Harry Blitzstein. He's an 86-year-old Jewish artist that has a building and a store on Fairfax that his family's owned for over 60 years, and he's been in there for over 30. And he's always made art. He's sold some, but he's never really tried to make it a business. Now the daughter's involved, and I met them through a mutual, and I went in there, bought some stuff, and now I'm like in there adding the layers and like teaching them business and helping them create prints and a book and taking them to trade shows. It's been a lot of fun.
That's so cool. Where can people find that art and buy it if they're interested?
Well, his Instagram's Harry Blitzstein.
Okay.
He's got about 2,000 followers on Instagram, but he's sold to like a bunch
that's
of...
for 86-year-old that just started this. That's pretty good if you ask me.
He's been selling forever, but he's never tried to sell any art. Like I think the year before I got involved, they had $14,000 worth of sales, but he's got over 1,700 pieces of art that I found. And like the first few plays we did, we made like over 50 grand for him. So like he's got amazing art. But yeah, Harry Blitzstein.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're living in your purpose doing that? Like when you think about it from a grand scale, is this now adding to the legacy you want to have, or how do you view it?
I feel like I'm finally at a point where I'm comfortable being myself and I'm not hiding it. Like I was in the public eye, I think a little bit harder than I wanted to be. But this allows me to do it at my pace, and I could turn it on and off. Whereas before, like the consignment aspect of it had me literally, I used to joke all the time that I ran the world's largest daycare, right? Over 30,000 consigners. We've had, hundreds of employees over the span of the brand, and it's like everybody's different. It's really hard to keep it all together when it's just you.
It's really interesting because your business, to me, especially in the building phase, people talk about wanting passive income, buying older businesses, turning a profit, not being heavily involved. I mean, you had the numbers and the sales everyone would want, but it sounds like your life 24/7 was that business.
Yeah, from the second I opened my eyes till I closed them, and even when they were closed, it was still work. And I think, I know when I look back, I went too hard in certain things and overlooked a lot of stuff. And I just felt like, with time, like those layers will get corrected, or the right person, or like it doesn't work like that, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like everything that's happened, I'm really thankful that it's happening. It's not the disconnect that, the fairy tale ending that you expect for something that started the way that my life started with, entrepreneurship, but it was the disconnect that I needed, and now I have like a real appreciation for everything I learned. Like that was the greatest masterclass I'll probably ever receive.
So did you sell the business, or are you just involved in the shadows? I
wouldn't say I sold it, but I'm not really there anymore. So
Gotcha.
I think like a lot of people that'll fall under like my stereotypes, I operated in faith, and I overlook some things, and sometimes you sign up sometimes you sign up for something that you think it is, and then it's not,
What were some of those areas that you mentioned that early on you think you over-indexed on, and others that you overlooked?
I felt like I needed to be everywhere all the time. So we had a partnership with American Eagle where I actually sold the percentage of my business to American Eagle, and it had certain metrics I had to meet for them to be able to exercise the option of them being able to take. And so that allowed me to have an opportunity to have an activation inside an American Eagle on Houston and Broadway in New York. We like quadrupled their foot traffic, raised their average dollar per transaction by $14. We turned SKUs that had never been in the top 50 and the top 3 items. Like, I did everything we were supposed to do and everything I wasn't supposed to. The biggest one was I went to New York that year 18 times, anywhere between 3 to 21 days, while running the store here, while also going to all the trade shows, which I've been 100 plus flights for north of 6 years globally, and also trying to be a husband and a father. And so COVID happens, and, you know, obviously the whole world is trying to shed fat because we have no idea of what's to come. And, you know, like, I love those guys at American Eagle. They taught me everything, a lot of what I know. But they were like, hey, look, you haven't been able to show us that you're able to handle this. So if you're traveling this much between the 2 stores, and it's just 2 stores, what does this look like when you have 100 stores? And that hurt to hear, but, you know, I couldn't get out of my own way. I was very wet behind the ears.
So they felt like you had an inability to scale? Is that essentially what it was? And
I was too needy.
Okay.
And I think it was just, when I look back, it's just certain conversations I should have had, or I misread the room or didn't understand. I put the blame on me more than anybody else, right? But again, it's, you know, you can't play butterfly effect, right? Like, it played out the way that it was supposed to, and it made me a better person. And, you know, I had a moment where we did some cool stuff with American Eagle.
For them, just thinking about a big corporation like American Eagle, what initially did they want out of it? Just to increase foot traffic in their brick and mortar stores?
You know, it's a great question. I think the family, the Schottenstein family, the guys that own it, they're just great people. They love to help. They help all the time, right? So there was that part of it. And from a business standpoint, it's a publicly traded company that is always looking for the next thing to help it build awareness, right? So on both sides, we were looking at it as, I recognized at that time, 6 out of 10 guys were wearing American Eagle denim. And I'm like, well, that's a percentage that's much higher than people that know my brand. So if I could put my brand in front of their brand, I'm going to win over some people at some point. And the same thing, right? And I wanted to really understand the logistics of clothing, because I was building a brand that was much more than sneakers and had a core following. So I wanted to figure out how to provide different offerings than just a traditional t-shirt and hoodie that every brand does.
That's very cool. Whenever you were first getting involved with him, what did that look like?
Oh, it was weird. It was like you couldn't even make up any of it. A buddy of mine, he goes by the name of Mayer, was a brand ambassador for a brand called TACMA, which is an acronym for They All Can Kiss My Ass. And it wasn't about like being negative or like anti. It was just about not seeking approval and doing it your own way. And so there's a trade show here called Magic and Agenda. And I was always kind of like the guy that would, you know, I would sign up to go, but didn't have the layers, didn't have a brand, trying to figure out how do you order, how do you get accounts, and all this other stuff. And I went to this show not wanting to go to this show because I had gone 6 times prior and never got like anything out of it as far as like monetizing or like getting a product in the store. And this one particular year it was coming up, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to go. And then last minute, I just decided to go and just walk around. And I saw Mayer walking around with Fat Joe, who's another dear friend. And so I'm like, well, if I walk around with these guys, somebody will probably ask me, like, what the heck am I doing here?
Right.
Who am I? And Mayer was this brand ambassador for TACMA, puts me in front of TACMA. He's like, you need to tell him your story. And so I'm like, all right. So I sit there, tell my story to the young lady that was there. And she's like, you got to tell my boss this story. This is crazy. I'm like, all right, so where's he at? So then I sit down with him, and he's like, you got to tell the owner that. Like, your story is insane. Like, this is, like, just doesn't, it's, like, wild. I'm like, okay, well, where's he at? This is all in the same day.
Like, I'm
He's
getting
like,
exhausted of telling
yeah.
this story.
He's at the Wynn. Just go over to the Wynn real quick. So, you know, the convention is, like, at Venetian, so at Sands. So I walk over, I go, and I'm thinking I'm just going to, you know, hey, nice to meet you. Here's my story. Or tell me and just walk off, right? Because, nah, it was a setup like this, cameras and everything. It's like, sit, tell your story. Next thing you know, like, that ends up being on some, like, commercial for them. Next thing you know, like, a couple months later, he hits me up and he's like, can we do our activation for TACMA inside your store? I had transitioned from the Hood Mall to the Good Mall at this point. And they did their activation because Agenda and Magic and all those shows are like every 6 months. There's that following show. I said, sure. And they're like, what do you want? I'm like, I don't want any money, but if we could do like a collaborative shirt, I think that would be a big win for me. And I don't even want the money. Let's donate the proceeds, because at the time, there was some hurricanes and floods in Puerto Rico, and I wanted to try to, you know, I'm from Puerto Rico, and so we did that. They had a great show, sold way more than they anticipated. That led to a couple weeks later, the owner gives me like this red pill, blue pill scenario where he's like, if you could fix retail, what does that look like, right? And I'm like, do I tell a guy I have no idea, like, who has all the resources, or do I just, like, brush him off? And, you know, solely based off of who introduced me, I'm like, you know what? I'll tell him what I think. And he calls his dad, and this is Jay Schottenstein that he calls, and he's like, Dad, this is the guy I've been telling you about. Like, we need to help him. I think he's got some great ideas, da-da-da-da-da. He's like, sure. Tell him to come hang out. So I go to New York. They put me on a flight, go to New York. We're at like Four Seasons, and it's like a room like twice the size of this, big giant Knights of the Round Table, and it's like executive after executive from American Eagle, and it's like, here's two options. We could either buy your brand and like you kind of oversee it a little bit, or we could give you some money and you just go on your own. And I'm like, well, if I go on my own, I'm going to kind of break this. Like, still don't know what I'm doing, you know? And I wanted to give an answer there. And my wife is like, just pump your brakes, you know? Mm-hmm. And then we started going back and forth for a while. And the biggest hardship I had throughout the whole process is like, how do I get my core following to support this like off the wall, not urban, suburban like play to happen? And then the more I thought about it, it was like, it's not about winning over the guys or girls that like are supporting you. It's about bringing new people to the table. And I've always had this theory of like, your support system only supports you for 6 months, and after that they're into something else, right? So I needed to scale where I wanted to go, right? Or where my ego wanted to go.
So what option did you end up choosing?
Oh, I took the partnership deal in a heartbeat, right? And then it was unreal. Building, signing the paperwork, like just being in a historical building that I used to walk by as a kid, being able to go back home, like, you can't. You know what I mean? Wow.
It is, and especially knowing at one point you're homeless, and then you're at a Four Seasons talking to what I assume is one of the wealthiest families.
Top 30 richest people in the
United
States.
In the country. Just on a basic level, what's going through your mind of, you know, I'm in this room?
Feels fake. I mean, even like, you know, like the impact of the people that, you know, not to change it, but like to tie it. Like another crazy play is like, there's a store in Saudi Arabia, right? And so those were clients that were coming to the Hood Mall. And I had no idea. And from the beginning, these guys are like, hey, let's open a store in Saudi. Let's open it. I'm like, guys, I don't even know what I'm doing in the Boulevard Mall. What are you talking about, Saudi? And that conversation happened for 6 years. And it got to the point where I was like, look, when I figure out what I'm doing, I'll call you. You guys are the only people we're going to call. And, you know, when we did this partnership with the people that own it now, when we were halfway through that deal, I'm like, hey, I think I got the layers. I'm ready. Like, this is what we need. It happened 6 months later. And now you got a store in Saudi Arabia. And I still haven't asked what these guys do for a living. And then I'm in Saudi in this guy's house that he said took 8 years to build. And he's pointing in, like, all the land in his backyard, saying, like, for as far as you could see from here to there, I own it. And it was literally like the entire, like, right? And so that's when I was like, all right, so what do you guys do for a living, right? And one of them's ex-executive for the soccer team that signed Neymar. The other one is like, the easiest way to explain it is like he's the first alternate to the throne for the city of like where the store is at. And the other one's like the cousin who's like a big time lawyer out in LA.
Wow. Do you believe in manifestation? Are you religious?
Yeah, I'm religious. I think everybody's a little religious. I definitely feel like I've been touched by the hand of God. I definitely feel like, you know, I have light that allows me to go through some really dark things, but you know, I'm still human and just me, and it's hard to handle it at times, you know, but it's a blessing. I'm thankful for all of it.
Certainly. Just listening to your story, though, I mean, there's so many takeaways for people that aspire to be business owners, but there's also a lot of things that happen in your life that immediately make me think of a higher power or a divine intervention to get into a room. And I think that's really cool because it's unique to your journey. You mentioned, though, some of those collabs that you were doing early on. You said, you know, Fat Joe, I know your brand has done some amazing collaborations. What's one of your favorites? Do you have one? Is it hard to pick? Is it like picking a favorite child?
Man, there's a lot of cool stuff we did. The Nautica one was cool because there was a moment when I was a kid and I used to steal Nautica, right? And then you're like telling that to like the VPs and the executives of Nautica, and I'm doing that collaboration when they're like competitor of American Eagle, and American Eagle's like, yeah, man, you got to go do that, you know, like that was really cool. When the Lahaina fires happened and we were able to raise money, that's where my wife is from, you know, like doing a collab with Stance and like selling socks at a faster rate than anything they had ever done. You know, like we've had some like cool like legacy moments. Like I definitely left impact, and it's cool that, you know, it's humbling to still be outside years later and someone still wants to say, hey, or because of, or like, let me take a picture because it meant something to them, right? But it's like it's a nasty base hit. Like you're like left still wanting to do it again, you know?
I can tell part of you, I
It's
feel like,
torn.
wants to build again.
I'm dying to build again.
Are you able to, or are you removed from that?
Yeah, I'm definitely able to. It's just, you know, have you ever tried to explain to your friends or your family that you're into something, and they're like, how do I say this? They just criticize it, and they're like, that sounds stupid, right? Or like, I'm in that stage, and it's not that it's dumb. It's just that what I'm talking about is so vastly different than what I'm known for that it's hard for people to understand what you're saying you want to do. So no one really sees the value yet. So, and I haven't done it consistently or strongly enough for them to like latch on.
Are you able to share any details, or are you keeping it under wraps for now?
I mean, I got some whacked ideas in my head. I've shared with Blake some of the stuff I want to do. Like, I definitely want to get back into the retail space because I have some unfinished business. I know everybody's like, dude, leave it alone. Like, you got away scot-free. You don't owe anybody any money. You didn't break it. Like, but there's so many layers that I wasn't able to add that are causing me to lose sleep. And I have opportunities to get back in this space through different brands and repackage them. And, you know, who knows?
Are you just giving it consideration? Have you?
Nah, I'm doing more than consideration. Okay. I'm like trying to figure out how I have multiple touch points in multiple regions while still being able to do, you know, Like I'm doing sit down interview podcast like stuff. I'm also trying to consult and like build another merch brand through. It's like 4 different projects all at the same time.
I think that a lot of people with the success you had in retail, I mean, in pretty early on, they would feel good about it. They'd be like, I'm hanging it up. I've made some money. But you seem like you have like a hunger and a drive as if none of it ever even happened.
Yeah, because it feels that way.
Really? Why is that?
Just because of the way it ended.
I mean, I can get that to a degree and feeling, but are there some people in your life that think, you had a great ending, want to ride off into the sunset, or most encouraging you to try to do it all again?
Everybody tells me no matter what, you're going to get back to where you want to be.
Okay.
So that's the cool part. And that's the like, all right, maybe I'm not as crazy as like I think I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll tell you off camera, like.
Okay, great. Because I was gonna say I want you to share just what you want to share, but I definitely can tell, with the ending, there's some stones potentially left unturned. But when I think about all you've told me and your incredible journey, one thing that I was thinking about earlier that I meant to ask you is, you get into these rooms, you mentioned the top 30 wealthiest families in the country, you're in Saudi with people that are heirs to thrones.
Yeah.
What do those people have, you think, and what perspective do they hold that helped you as a business owner, or even someone to have vision in general?
Remove emotion, which is, as you can see, is very difficult for me still, right? Like, everything is just math, right? It's not happening because of a race or lack of education or this or that. It's just, is it scalable, and is it noise, or is there value, right? So that's what I've kind of learned a lot, from hanging out with some of the people that I have over times, but still trying to figure out the artsy side of everything that needs to have storytelling on it. So, I'm better today than I was, when I started. I'm not as naive, but I'm still very wet behind the ears and have a lot to learn.
So when it comes to lessons you've learned business-wise, is there one L you took that you're like, this is a lesson I will never forget?
Oh, yeah, this current one. This current one is the most expensive class I've ever had to take, and I'm thankful for it. I'm really thankful for it.
And we can obviously discuss that off camera. I don't want you to share anything you don't want to. What about early on? Was there a costly mistake in the beginning stages?
Yeah. Couldn't control my emotions, overreacted to a lot, lost a lot of great people, and being unable to articulate the why correctly. Like, I would create processes and procedures, but because I'm looking at the bank account and none of that money's ours because it's a consignment shop, like what made sense today might not necessarily make sense right now. And I would cause these pivots to happen as opposed to like presenting them in the correct way, right? Correct way is like allowing it to break, looking back and saying, okay, see, well, this changed, and just like the emotion. And heaven forbid I had to talk to like a staff member back then, like more than once about 2 or 3 different things in a day. It was like, no matter what I do, he doesn't like me, and then they would quit. So I lost a lot of great people throughout the brand, and I give thanks for those that like allowed me to build, and sincerely empathetic for those that like, I caused trauma to, because I do have people that I've caused trauma to, that have reached out and said, hey, because you said this or handled it that way, like it caused me to do this. But also excited for breaking it that way, because I gave people examples of how not to do stuff. And I've also had people tell me like, hey, because you handled it that way, I did it this way, and this is how it works. So, it's just adulting.
For sure. Most definitely. And I want to wrap with this. $40 to over 30 million in sales. That's what you were able to achieve. If you had to boil it down to one thing for an aspiring entrepreneur, what would it be?
Do what's right, even when it's wrong for you. Like, the most important thing is your name, your integrity. If you don't have that, there's no way that you get in any room, and that anything that you're trying to add is looked at as value.
Jaysse, thank you so much
No,
for sharing your story
no, I
with us.
appreciate you.
Absolutely.